During the high noon of May 1st, 2012, a Reddit post was suddenly created on the subreddit r/askreddit with a question for all users. Throwaway time. What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? This post created waves of attention as it had over 43,000 comments under the thread. Some were wholesome and some were just, well, it answered the question perfectly. As the thread continued to go deeper, it went towards the morbid territory, but out of all of them, throw QWERTY away definitely had the worst of the worst from it all. When I was around 10 or 11 years old, one of the maid's daughter, who probably was 13 or 14 at the time, had a pretty weird relationship with me. We both mutually liked each other, but the relationship couldn't happen because my mother strictly forbid me to associate myself with any of the attendants or the family. We did some mild petting, I guess. OP then describes how both of them acted borderline physical with each other, and definitely was not old enough to do so. We had a bunch of dogs in the back area, mainly German Shepherd mutts. I personally love dogs and all sorts of animals, so I frequently spent my time in the back lot with the dogs. I watched the dogs mount each other and was interested in what they were doing. Yeah, it was kind of gross, but I was interested. I went over to feed the dog and saw her in the back lot helping her mom hang some clothes. I told her about my pretty fucked up idea. I wanted her to get mounted by one of the bigger dogs and she agreed to it. We waited a couple days when absolutely no one was home, except for maybe a couple of the other attendants' kids, for her to do it. She stripped down and walked over to one of the bigger dogs and kneeled down on all fours in front of the dog. The dog started sniffing her backside for a few seconds and she got up and ran. The dog then chased after her and jumped on her back. She didn't fully fall face first as she went down on all fours again. The dog then... A few weeks later, she committed suicide. I don't know if it was because of my idea or if there were any other causes leading to a suicide. To this day, I still think my juvenile mind could have caused the death of another person. I'm pretty sure you guys already know what the replies are going to be. J2Raid said what I bet everyone was thinking after finishing. This one. I need a break after this one. And the user underneath, the ethereal, is what everyone wished they believed. I stopped reading at, we had a bunch of dogs in the back area, and I'm going to assume they played fetch with the dogs and called it a day. And if only this was true. This is just fucking terrible. As simple as that. Kids can do stupid things sometimes, and everyone's been there. But what's this? I couldn't even believe it when I was first hearing it on Fortune's video, and he couldn't even believe it himself. The only thing I can think after this is that I hope the girl is now just resting peacefully. On the mundane night of September 15th, 2009, an account was created under the alias SpontaneousH, writing and admitting on the subreddit Ask Me Anything, where the mundane becomes fascinating and the outrageous suddenly seems normal. Minutes past midnight, SpontaneousH created their first submission, revealing to viewers how boring his life has become and wanting to take a risk. I've never been a drug user. I drink once in a while, and smoked pot years ago back when I was a teen in high school a few times, and that's it. I'm 24 now, have a master's, and a well-paying full-time job. Yesterday, I was walking through Washington Square Park, where I pass every day, and there's always people there looking to sell drugs. They usually don't solicit drugs to you unless you stop to stand around near one of them for some reason, or look like you're looking for something. Yesterday, I happened to stop by Royal Benches to check some messages on my phone when a dealer on the bench to my right asked me if I need anything. My life has been pretty boring the last few years, and I feel like I haven't really lived, taken any risk, or done anything crazy, so I figured what the hell, maybe I'll buy some pot, it's been a while. I said yeah, and after asking me several times if I'm a cop, he gives me his number and tells me to meet him at a fast food place several blocks away, and he will hook me up. I say alright and nervously check to make sure I have cash and go meet this shady looking dude. We sit down, and after hounding me asking if I'm a cop, he asks what I need. I tell him I want a dime bag, and he says something like,
"Nah, sorry man, I only sell half ounces. You can take that, and I got some coke and H."
At this point, I don't want to buy half an ounce of pot. I probably never smoked more than an eighth in my life. But then, I started considering his last word, heroin. I've heard so much about it, and how crazy addictive it is, and seen it in the movies and TV, and it really started to intrigue me. I've always wondered what it would be like to do heroin. Out of nowhere I say, I'll take H, and we can do the deal there. I give him the cash under the table, and he slides me a small order of fries with a little stamped wax baggie in it. Then, he tells me to let him leave first. I put it in my pocket, then nervously raced home, not believing what I had just done. I held onto that bag in my pocket, palms sweating the whole ride home. When I get home, I open the bag, dump some golden flakes and powder onto my glass table. At this point, I didn't even try what to do. I know you can snort heroin, but it looked all flaky, so I tried to remember how they did it in the movies, but they always seemed to inject it in film. So I started googling how to snort heroin like an idiot and do a little research on the stuff and how much to take. I used the card to get it into a fine powder and move a small bump to a side, which I inhaled through a dollar bill. I didn't feel anything yet, so I snorted a small line, which was essentially half the bag. I was blown away by the power of this drug and just how orgasmic it felt. I never understood why people did drugs before and got so hooked on them, but now I see. I have the urge to do it again, but I will resist not to do it, at least not for a long time. I understand the addiction potential and how someone could easily tear apart their lives with this stuff. Heroin is a pure powdered pleasure. I actually feel proud of myself for having the balls to do something this crazy, and I feel it was a valuable life experience and my window into another world and part of society. I will never forget the day I did heroin. Now, ask me anything. As the Redditor posted this confession, thousands of comments started to flood in, as the majority of people were either extremely curious about the aftermath or were strongly against it. An ex-user going by Flixer provided his strong opinions about being careful whenever using such a strong drug. It's really stupid to do heroin alone, especially for the first time. Don't do that again. People die. Trust me, I know. I used to do heroin 15 or so years ago. I loved it. So did my friends. Some who are dead or brain damage from it now. I really think it's a dangerous drug. I'm all for legalizing everything, but I really think that's the one thing that's best avoided. Be careful, man. Another Redditor, American Idol, just stated to straight not to do it, alongside with providing his sad personal experience. Fuck heroin. It's awesome. Too awesome. The only reason I stopped is because I lost two good friends to it. One died after an OD, the other is still alive, but he's all but a vegetable. He just started walking last year with the help of a walker. He still can't speak, shakes like he got Parkinson's, and this guy used to be a 225-pound wrestler in high school and college, all paid by a scholarship. We were just kids having fun. Fuck heroin. All of that happened in a month, and I have to admit, I still want it. September 27th, 12 days after the initial post. Opie has now created his own bed, and now has to lie on it. Fuck, I'm still withdrawing, throwing up, and sweating out gallons of sweat. I really want to use and relapse right now. I know I shouldn't. These urges are so strong and overpowering. Please help me if you can, before I get the chance to. 1,000 comment update. Fuck my life. I wish I was trolling, and this was all some elaborate lie. I was doing everything right, have been clean, and somehow, a rumor got out that I've been using, and my girlfriend found out, and she basically broke up with me last night, and is now putting that decision on hold. I have some serious unrelated business work I need to attend in 2 hours, and I don't know if I'll be in any state to be able to, and be ready. I can't stop crying. Fuck heroin. Fuck my life. I guess I don't need to say that heroin pretty much fucked my life in under 2 weeks. I just want to die. Because of all of the non-believers, OP then posted an image proof, the needles, swabs, and the band-aids to cover up the track marks with the Reddit background of the post. I will be checking out a Narcotic Anonymous meeting this week, and I know I'm on a fast track to becoming an addict, and I want to stop before it gets out of control and I'm physically addicted. No one in my life can know about this, and I want to stop before it's too late. Today, I met a guy through some internet channels who said he could get bundles, 10 small bags of heroin, for significantly less than half the price my old dealer gave me on his most fair deal. He also happened to be an IV user and had a stash of sealed needles and supplies and offered me to shoot up. After not hitting a vein countless times, I finally got a red flag and was good to go. I have injected 5 bags since 4 PM, the last one a little less than an hour ago, and am tempted to do one more. Ask me anything. Forgive me for any delays if I nod off. I don't know if anyone remembers me, but you can look through my submission history and get an idea. It's not pretty and will take you through a journey of my first time trying heroin to my life quickly falling apart. So take that as a warning. It's graphic, I was totally out of my mind, and you might not want to read it depending on where you're at. This is the first time I've logged into this account in a couple years, and I have a bunch of personal messages, and people occasionally mention this account in various places on Reddit, so I'll post a quick update here for anyone who stumbles upon this in the future. I'm now almost 6 years clean from all drugs and alcohol, and life is good. It's difficult for me to go back and even read most of what I originally wrote 7 years ago. Maybe one day I will be able to. I don't remember what I said in the first post, but I know I can look back objectively and say that things probably weren't as good and normal before I tried heroin that time as I made it seem in that first post. There were certainly warning signs before that with alcohol, weed, and other things I had issues with substances, although I probably couldn't admit to it myself at the time. I would have never tried it if things were never truly going well for me. What followed me in later posts with where it took me was very real. Thanks for everyone who reached out over the years. I hope everyone is able to find recovery and get the help they need. These posts have been nothing but mentally draining just by seeing Spontaneous plummet into a downward spiral, but I'm glad to see that he is fully recovered from that tragedy. It has been 7 years since that post was created, and the last glimpse of SpontaneousH was of 2 years ago when replying to a commenter about how he hadn't done any hard drugs or alcohol ever since November of 2010. Now, he is still recovering and trying to get his life together, just like the rest of us. On the sorrowful night of January 16, 2018, an account was created under the alias kyourcoconut, posting about their traumatizing experience on the subreddit r/justnomills, a place to post about your mother or your mother-in-law who's just the worst. Come for support, come for advice, or just to vent and get it all out. The original poster started the story by providing context, introducing how she got married in 2002 to her husband and had a son roughly 10 months after. She then goes into detail about her experience of how the situation began, starting with the birth of her twin daughters. Hello, I'm a first time poster, but I discovered this subreddit a few months ago. I was talking about this subreddit with my therapist, and she gave me the homework of speaking out more about my story to see if it lessened my pain. I've written and deleted this post maybe 7 times now, but I think it's time to get it out. When my twin girls were born, we had no issues in the hospital. However, when we brought them home, we noticed that one of the girls, let's call her OD since she was a whole 4.5 minutes older than her sister, was developing a rash. I hadn't really dealt with allergies in kids since my son didn't have them, and neither did any child or adult in my entire family. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought it was just maybe she had sensitive skin like me. I can't tolerate certain fabrics because I have very dry skin, and I often break out in rashes if my skin decides that it doesn't like something. So I stopped using fabric softener on all the clothes. As OD kept on having severe allergic reactions over and over again, she had to be kept in a clean room. As more than 3 months passed, OP and her husband luckily found what was the cause of OD's reaction. Our OD was allergic to coconut, and so it wasn't on any skin test panel they ran. When we found out what she was allergic to, we were relieved. So relieved. But in addition to feeling relieved, I delved into a ball of hysterical laughter. I laughed so hard I cried, and to this day, my dear husband told me that he didn't know if I was crying from relief or pure happiness. OP then went into quick detail about how coconut is commonly used in their culture and for their hairstyle, which is how it could have affected OD in the first place. Carrying on, OP provided context about the state of her relationship with her mother, aka OD's grandmother. One of the many decisions that the grandmother did not agree with OP and kept on bickering with was the coconut allergy, specifically about using coconut oil for OD's hair. The grandmother even knew the struggles of what they went through, yet somehow passed it on as it was a minor issue. And this was the beginning of a tragedy. One year had passed. At 5 AM, OP went to pick up her husband from the airport as he was overseas for a conference. As she picked him up, they decided to drive back home and have breakfast with the kids and grandparents. However, something horrendous had happened. We got to my parents' house at 7:45 AM. My parents weren't there. My son was at the neighbor's house and ran outside with the neighbor as soon as he saw his daddy and I pull up. He was hysterical and crying, and I couldn't calm him down. My blood pressure was rising because now I'm thinking that something horrible had happened to my parents. I honestly don't remember the details of what happened next, but somehow we figured out the ambulance was from a hospital nearby. They managed to get to the hospital and ran to a group of nurses straight away. OP explained everything that she knew. However, whilst explaining, one nurse was mortified and almost started crying as she knew what happened. My mother had fucking put coconut oil in both my daughter's hair when they were playing the previous day before bed. According to my son, OD started to get a little dizzy and itchy when my mother was doing her hair. My mother simply gave her some Benadryl and kept the coconut oil in her hair and put her to fucking sleep. The Benadryl made her sleepy and was unable to wake her or be conscious enough to wake up her brother or cry. She vomited in her sleep and the rash spread all over. Her little body was swollen to twice the size. She had asphyxiated in her sleep. She died painfully and slowly in the early hours of the morning. OP and her husband were in disbelief and denial. No way that their precious daughter had suddenly been taken away from them. After everything, the grandfather left the grandmother, and the majority of the mother's side of the family barely or refuses to speak with her whatsoever. The grandmother became very lonely and continuously called OP. I'll get a call from her telling how sorry she is and how she wasn't thinking, and can I please find a way to forgive her. She wants to come see me. The only thing I can find to ever say to her is, you can come see me when you bring my daughter with you. Of course, hundreds of Redditors commented their outrage towards the situation, and as they should, but most of them sent their regards because of how awful everything had turned out. The user, Westside Illuminati, simply stated what everyone is thinking after finishing the story. This just breaks my heart to no end. I am deeply sorry for your loss. Another user going by the name, The Bitch Pudding, gave an aggressive yet understandable opinion about OP's mother. What a miserable bitch. She should be in prison. She knowingly and willingly exposed your child to an allergen she was made aware of. And lastly, A deleted user wrote one of the best replies and is basically a summarized version of what most commenters on the thread were. Thank you for writing this post. It's clear how hard it was for you, yet you did it. Thank you for writing this because your words have reached countless people, some of whom don't take allergies seriously. They do now. Thank you for your courage and for telling your story, sending you and your children and husband all the good thoughts. OP has described what life has been ever since the passing of OD. OP and her husband were able to help each other cope with their loss and having to go to therapy for over a decade, and that the son and the younger daughter had turned into amazing adults. But sadly, it hasn't been the same ever since. When I first heard this on Tov's channel, you couldn't comprehend the amount of anger I had from the story. It's not only heartbreaking but also just fucking frustrating because the mother already knew that her grandchild had this severe allergy, yet still fucking did it. So glad that OP cut her out of her life, and hopefully for good. The situation is nothing but shitty, but I hope OP is still trying to live her best life with her family. In August 2021, a throwaway account was created under the alias GentleChubbyBellfrog with the intention of writing a post on the subreddit r/confessions, a place to admit your wrongdoings, acknowledge your guilt, and alleviate your conscience. Later that evening, the user created the first and only post confessing about quite a traumatizing experience in her childhood. I murdered my sister 17 years ago today. The post was later removed by moderators due to undisclosed reasons, but I was luckily able to find a thread through an archive. So let's get started with the story. First of all, police already know. Whole town knows. It was on the news. Secondly, this is a throwaway account. I marked it not safe for work, just to be safe. Anyways, here goes. 17 years ago, I was 5 years old, my sister was 2.5. We bathed together many times, mostly with supervision, but sometimes not. My mother was a low-income single parent with a new baby and 2 jobs. Sometimes she needed to quickly run off to take care of the baby. Yes, irresponsible to leave kids in the bathroom alone, but 9,999 out of 10,000, it would be fine. It was only for a couple minutes, and hindsight is 20/20. Plus, who really expects their kid to drown their sibling if you turn away for a few minutes? Well, on this day 17 years ago, we were bathing as normal, only today, I was really mad at my sister because she ripped up a book that I liked. Our mother was cooking dinner, she'd come home late from work and we were behind schedule. I don't remember these details, but I've been in therapy with my mother many times and we've discussed every minute of this night. So I'm in the bath with my sister. I had this irrational hatred that little kids feel when they're too young to understand consequences. I wasn't thinking rationally, I wasn't in a forgiving mood, I wasn't looking at my baby sister and seeing this little girl that I love so much. I wasn't remembering how much we played together and how much I loved her and how happy I was to be a big sister. At that moment, I just hated her so much. I remember thinking I wish my sister would go away so she couldn't wreck my stuff, and then I remembered that if her head was under the water, she would be gone forever. I reached out one hand and just held her on her head and looked at her face. I was so angry with her, and she was so stupid she didn't even care that she had wrecked my book and upset me. I would be so much happier if she was gone forever. I pulled my hand and her head forward, pushing her face into the bath water briefly, and she put it back and coughed and made a little sluttery whimper sound. I seen she was so shocked and scared by what I did, which just made me happy. Shouldn't have wrecked my book, so I did it again. I held her head with both hands and I pulled her face down into the water between my knees. She flailed about and tried to push up, but she was so little and there was nothing she could do. In what felt like only seconds, but had to be longer, she completely stopped resisting or moving at all. Like it felt like I had held her down for about 10 seconds max, but it was certainly longer. I let go and she didn't move. I waited for her to sit up. I wanted her to look scared and upset again. It was my revenge for her breaking my stuff. Of course she never did. I lifted her up and shook her. I thought she was only pretending to hurt me and it just made me even more mad. I didn't know what I had done, not right away. I really didn't want her gone forever. Not really. I just wanted to make her sorry for wrecking my stuff. I tried opening her eyes with my fingers and I was asking her to stop doing this. I begged her to stop doing this and just look at me. I wasn't mad anymore. I was scared and worried. I was crying and screaming at her. I don't remember much about this part. I made enough noise that our mother came running in. and I told her what I had done and how I just totally fucking destroyed her entire life. 17 years ago, ambulance came and there was nothing they could do. Our mother tried to do CPR, but she didn't know how. It wasn't successful. I didn't get in any trouble because I was so young, but I was taken out of home for a while and I had to see a lot of shrinks over the years. My mother got in a lot of trouble, but I'm not entirely sure how much. I told the police everything and they treated me like I wasn't a filthy murdering piece of shit. They were kind and they sat with me, and I was picked up from the police station that day by a couple who were also really nice to me. They treated me as if I was some sweet innocent child who had been hurt instead of some monster who killed a baby. Nobody ever treated me the way I felt I deserved. Well, except my grandparents who won't speak to us at all. They haven't said a single word to me since that day, and they verbally abused my mother heavily at my sister's funeral. They have not spoken to any of us since that day, even my brother who was just a baby, too young to even remember he had another sister. I don't know what they said to her, but I've heard her talk about it in therapy. I moved back in with my mother a few months later, and I still live with her today. She won't talk to me directly about what happened. She won't tell me what happened to her afterwards, or how people treated her over this. Instead, she will only focus on me. She blames herself 100% and me 0%, and she tries so hard to do what is right and look out for me and my mental health, but what I did permanently broke her. I honestly cannot think of a single time since that day I've ever seen her happy or even smile. She always looks on the edge of a breakdown, and she doesn't look at me in the face for more than a brief glimpse. She can't talk to me for long before she goes all quiet and eventually starts to cry. Myself, like I said, I've seen a lot of shrinks over the years, pretty much non-stop since it happened. I've been in and out of various places, often for suicide watch. I have quite a few not so serious attempts and 4 quite serious, 2 of which I should have died. Medication is not a reliable suicide method, and I've caused serious internal damage. I haven't tried anything for a while, but the thoughts are constantly there. The reason I stopped is because I overheard my mother and her friend on the phone and heard how almost losing another daughter was destroying her. So being a selfish piece of shit, I was hurting her even more than I have already, and was too concerned with myself to even notice it. I still live with my mother, which has to just be awful for her, but she doesn't want me to move in my own house because of my history with suicide attempts, and doctors and therapists agree, so I'm not able to move out. I'm checked on constantly. I'm such a burden to her, and I don't know what I can do to stop. I don't do drugs or alcohol, but I think mostly because I just really didn't have a chance in my younger years because I was watched too closely. I've never been able to connect with anyone long enough to start a relationship, and I've never felt deserving of love or happiness, so I've not really had much to do with boys or even friends. My current therapist wants me to discuss this with strangers. She suggested group, but I don't want face to face. I don't want to look in the eyes of strangers and see pity or forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I don't want to be forgiven. I don't want to forget. What I did was not okay. I would trade place with her in a heartbeat if I could. She was so young and so small, and always laughed and was so happy, and she gave the best cuddles. She used to sit next to me while we watched TV and would reach around and hug me tight. She laughed at my silly dances and funny voices and just made the whole world a happier place. And I fucking ruined it all because she taught a book I liked that I don't even remember the name of. I don't want forgiveness. I don't want absolution. I just want to get this off my chest, but I don't want to have to see the way people look at me when I do. I want people to know what I did, but I don't want it to affect my mother any more than it has. She's gone through hell with this. Fucking hell, guys. Once the Redditor posted this submission, it took the subreddit by storm as thousands of viewers were stunned, jaw-dropped, and disheartened from reading this. A user that goes by Velarux simply stated, "This is probably one of the darkest things I've read." And if I'm being honest, it's 100% true. So disturbing and dark to the point where it even left other users such as the Little Pessimist and the Deleted User wishing that they've never read this due to being extremely too much for them to handle. Another Redditor, Aans, found this situation absolutely devastating as they could empathize from this tragedy since they went through a similar personal experience when they were younger. This struck hard for me. When I was 5 and my brother was 3, he fell into the deep end of a pool, and I only saw that instant and I didn't understand that he was gonna die, and was laughing at all the splashing. Thankfully, my dad saw and saved him, but I occasionally have nightmares about it. He is not only my brother, but one of my closest friends, and it scares me to think about the other outcome. And lastly, A bunch of other Redditors provided their reaction, gave their sympathy for OP, and advice to help her move on from the situation and focus on her future life. Kinsia provided their input by stating, "I think it's exactly as you said. You were 5 and didn't understand the consequences. Few children at that age fully understand what death is, or forever. The immense guilt is destroying you, but I at least don't think you deserve to die or be punished, and you certainly are not obligated to torture or kill yourself to compensate over the death of your sister." Followed by Silverstreet1 commenting about how even though it would be difficult, it would be beneficial to try talking to others about the incident. Your whole story goes beyond Reddit's advice, and maybe you should join a live group as your therapist suggested. Maybe those people will help you learn to live with that part of your life. Ending it off with Crash 357 with one of the best responses on the thread, saying, "Your punishment is to live. Make it the best life you can afford. Live both for yourself and your sister. No one blames you, and rightfully so. You were just a child." First hearing the story made me feel every single emotion and made me go back and forth with my mindset because OP did kill her sister, but still, she was so young to realize what she did and had no concept of what death was. The same thing goes with the mom. Why wasn't she supervising her kid? But also, why would she suspect that her daughter would do such a thing? Despite what you think though, you can easily tell how much of their lives has fallen apart. It has now been 3 years since this was posted, and nothing has come from her since. No update at all, and her comments have now been deleted from the thread. Myself and other commenters on the thread hopefully wish as of now that the family can progress themselves from this tragedy.